Now, finally, we're going to get to some British explorers because while Spain was claiming land and the French were claiming land, Great Britain or England was like, we want that too. We want to take over the world. And that was a really horrible accent because I can't think of a British accent right now. But nonetheless, they wanted the stuff, right? So they sent an explorer named John Cabot. His real name was actually Giovanni Caboto. He was originally from Italy. But remember how Italy didn't send Christopher Columbus, right? Columbus was an Italian man, but it was Spain that actually sent him. Similarly, Italy wouldn't send Giovanni Caboto. So he went up to England and was like, will you pay for me to go sailing to North America? And England was like, yeah, we'll do that because we want some of that, but we can't pronounce your name. So can we just call you John Cabot? And he was like, yeah, I just want to sail. So John Cabot set sail from England, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and he landed on the east coast of North America, kind of up where Canada is too. And he was the first British sailor to claim land for England on North America. Then later on, another explorer named Henry Hudson joined the scene, and he also wanted to discover land and claim it for countries that would send him, but he had another purpose. You see, he was going back to the Marco Polo era. He was going back to wanting to find a quicker route to Asia. You see, Henry Hudson believed that there was a way to sail through North America and then get to Asia on the other side. We now know that there is no way you can sail through North America. There's that little tiny sliver at Panama, but even then they had to make a canal to go through. So at this time, he was looking for what was called the Northwest Passage. He thought there would be a shortcut. If you went north and west, maybe you could get through North America. You can't, but he was looking for that shortcut. So the first time he was sent by the Dutch, right? It was the Netherlands that sent Henry Hudson the first time. So we'll get to the British in a second. The Dutch are getting in on this too. So he starts here in Amsterdam, where that yellow country is. That's the Netherlands, also called Holland, right? And so he sets sail and he's like, whoop, wrong way. And then he hits land in what is today New York. And he starts going up a river thinking, oh, I found a way through the continent. And he starts going up that river and then he realizes, oh, it's just a river. It doesn't actually go through the continent. So he turns back around and he establishes a city called New Amsterdam, right? He came from Amsterdam, and so he establishes a city called New Amsterdam. Today, New Amsterdam is what we call New York, right? So New York City was established by Henry Hudson, but it used to be called New Amsterdam. That river that he sailed up thinking it was a way through North America, that's called the Hudson River. So the Hudson River goes through New York City, and it was named after this guy who couldn't find a way through the continent. So after that failure, at least he got to establish a colony for the Netherlands. So the Dutch actually got a little sliver of land in North America. So then he goes back and he's like, oh, I failed. And so the Dutch are like, well, yeah, you did. We're not going to send you sailing anymore. So he goes to England and he's like, hey, England, will you send me to try to find the Northwest Passage? And they do. So now we're back to the British again, right? So England, or the British, send Henry Hudson once again back to North America to try to look for the Northwest Passage. This time he stays a little bit farther north, touches Iceland, touches Greenland, keeps on going through this part of Canada, and then he ends up in this big old bay, which is today called Hudson Bay. But before it was called Hudson Bay, Henry Hudson actually believed It was the Pacific Ocean. So he gets through this part of Canada, and then it opens up into this big, massive bay. And he thought it was the Pacific Ocean. He thought he made his way through North America. Well, then he started to get really, really cold, and all of his men lost their food because it was really, really cold. And they kept going all around Hudson Bay looking for a way out because they thought it was the Pacific Ocean. And so his men had a mutiny and they threw Henry Hudson overboard, and he ended up dying and never returning. But at least they got to name the bay after him. And in the process, England got to say, oh yeah, we sent Henry Hudson over to that area that we now call Canada. And so England, or the British, get to claim even more land in North America. History will later unfold, and the British are going to end up taking over that Dutch colony. The British are going to take over New Amsterdam, and they're going to name it after one of their cities called York. So New York gets renamed from New Amsterdam and becomes New York, to be named after York, which is in England. Very original names they have. We've got New Spain and New France and New York. Instead of coming up with new names, they just said, well, we'll just call it New something. So there you have it. There's some of the main explorers and the different ways that they conquered and took over and claimed land in North America. So here's what we're really looking at now as we move forward. We've got the map on the left is showing us the different explorers and the paths or the routes that they took. The map on the right is showing us the land that they claimed. And we can see wherever the Spanish explorers sailed and explored, they then claimed that land for New Spain. And wherever the French explorers explored and claimed land, it became New France. And wherever the Dutch explorers, we've got Henry Hudson's voyage right here, and there's a little teeny tiny sliver of purple squeezed in between New England there. And then when the British set sail and claimed land, they claimed land on these parts of North America. And again, let's not forget, there were people already here. For thousands of years, the Native Americans, the indigenous people, were already here. So moving forward, there's going to be some tension and conflict, as well as periods of peace and trade between these clashing groups of people. And we'll kind of explore how that goes on as the weeks unfold.